Today, we preview the 2025 Colorado Rockies with Patrick Lyons from Just Baseball Media and the Rockies Insider Podcast. You're listening to the Bucko Banter Podcast, brought to you by the Just Baseball Media Network. Cue music.
Rockin' 101s, yeah, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates, and they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plate, send in case after case. Run my race at my pace, clear the grass of the snake.
Welcome back to another episode of Bucko Banner. We have our last preview of the NL West with the Colorado Rockies. We saved the best for last, and we're joined by a fellow network mate here at Just Baseball, Patrick Lyons. Patrick, welcome to the podcast.
Scotty Adam, man, it's been a pleasure. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate having you on. Let's talk Rockies baseball, Patrick. We got 2024, 61 and 101, last in the NL West. It's tough sledding out there. From a Pirates fan, we get it. We're kind of in the same boat here, trying to build our way up, but let's go through the offseason and get a grade. All right. Free agency, left-handed pitcher Scott Alexander, Thairo Estrada, Kyle Farmer, Jacob Stallings is there. You added Owen Miller via trade, and then you lost Cal Quantrill, Brendan Rodgers, Daniel Bard, Charlie Blackmon retired, Jake Cave, Dakota Hudson, Peter Lambert. How are we feeling about this offseason given the last place finish last year?
As you put it, last place finish, 6 consecutive losing seasons, back-to-back 100-loss campaigns. It really feels like this offseason, like many previously, was an opportunity to make some more larger and notable moves, typically via trade, because signing free agents can be a challenge. The front office also was told they needed to cut a little bit of payroll. So a creative trade or two to maybe shift the dynamics of the roster, similar to what the previous GM was able to do in 2016 when they brought in a guy that was going to be their closer in Jake McGee and a young starting pitcher in Germán Marquez. That was a big kind of underrated trade at the time. We did not see a trade like that this offseason from GM Bill Schmidt. So for me, I would probably have to put the offseason grade at somewhere around a D. You know, I like the addition of Scott Alexander to add some veteran presence in the bullpen, and they only just got that done once everyone was down in Scottsdale, Arizona at the Salt River Fields spring training facility. But otherwise, you know, you're swapping out Brendan Rodgers for Thairo Estrada. You're upgrading your utility infielder from, you know, Aaron Schunk and Alan Trejo in years past to now a Kyle Farmer. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Scott Alexander was a name that we had our eyes on as a left-handed reliever because the Pirates were looking at left-handed relievers this offseason. So I like that for sure. But if we're looking at this lineup, and we'll dive into the lineup here in a second, looking at the lineup, like it's pretty solid from my perspective. And it just seems like pitching might be, you know, as it always will be, a problem in Colorado, given the elevation and all that. And then also, like, how much does playing in the NL West factor into what they're doing in the offseason? Because the NL West is an absolute gauntlet. It gets better and better every year.
Yeah, I think the fact that they play in the NL West and they're going against the Los Angeles Dodgers, I think there might be too much put upon something like that than is truly the case now, with there being 3 wild cards, and now with teams inside your division no longer going toe to toe 19 times. Now we're down to 9. Now all of a sudden, you know, your division rivals are just the teams that you end up playing one extra series at home, and you visit one extra time on the road. So in 2025, you know, even if you are in a division with a behemoth, you still have 3 more bites at the apple to go to the postseason. So that really shouldn't deter you from going after it. I mean, look at what the Arizona Diamondbacks have been doing the last couple off seasons. You know, the Giants continue to dip their toe into the water, can't quite figure it out. And then the Padres, a team that is in very many ways similar to the Rockies. They also lost their television deal, and yet they were going out and spending top dollar and packing out their stadium for many of all the right reasons, because of their star power and because the fact that there were those investments in the team. So, you know, yes, you are in the same division with the Los Angeles Dodgers, so you're going to get some of those comparisons. But at the same time, you know, cross them out in the National League and say, okay, now of the next best 14 teams, can we possibly, work our way towards the top and get a postseason spot? I think that's really the mindset that, any small market team in a division with a powerhouse really should be having.
Let's go through the projected lineup here. This is just on Fangraphs, but want to get your opinion not only on that, but the projected bench as well, and then some honorable mentions. This is how they have it shaping up to start the season. Center field, Brenton Doyle. Love that. Third base, Ryan McMahon. Shortstop, Ezekiel Tovar. DH, Chris Bryant. First base, Michael Tolia. Left field, Nolan Jones. Second base, Tyler Estrada. Right field, Jordan Beck. And then behind the dish, Jacob Stallings. And then on the bench, catcher utility, Hunter Goodman, Kyle Farmer, Sam Hilliard, and Greg Jones. Out of that lineup, are you seeing? I mean, like Scott said, I don't hate it, but what's the biggest weakness here? What's the biggest strength going into 2025?
Well, I think one of the areas that has a big question mark on it is the middle of the order, right? You got Chris Bryant, a name that very well from the NL Central, Rookie of the Year, MVP, World Series award winner within his first 18 months of being a big leaguer.
Yeah.
So he definitely has that pedigree, but we have not seen that player in Colorado. In his 3 years already in purple, he's only played 159 games. So we're yet to even see a full season out of Chris Bryant. Now, he has looked a little bit healthier, and he has put a lot more focus on his health and getting his back in a much better condition than it's been. Was able to drive a ball about 112 miles an hour, 462 feet, something that he hasn't done in close to a decade. So, that's somewhat promising to think that, okay, maybe if he can stay healthy, 20 home runs, which at this point he has yet to hit with the Rockies. He's only at 17 in his 3 years. But okay, 20 home runs in the middle of that lineup, that's good. Can Michael Tolia build upon his 25 home runs from last year, which was really only done in about 3/4 of the season?
Yeah.
Maybe that ends up becoming a lot more like 30 home runs. And then Nolan Jones, a player who in 2023 played well enough where hit 20 homers, 20 stolen bases, had 19 outfield assists. We've never seen that before, and played well enough that he actually garnered a second place vote in the National League Rookie of the Year award voting from me, as well as somebody in Pittsburgh. There was a Pittsburgh voter in the market that also thought that Nolan Jones deserved a second place finish. So if he can get back to those 2023 levels and build upon that, now all of a sudden, if that's your fourth, fifth, and sixth hitter, you're getting 20 home runs out of those three guys, in addition to 20 home runs out of the first three in Doyle, McMahon, and Tovar. Now, all of a sudden, you're looking more like a team that could possibly threaten to win maybe 75 games at best. I think 71 might kind of be their ceiling of where they're going to be. But there's plenty of actual potential that you could put your finger on and say, you know what, this is a reasonable goal for this team to have in 2025.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of young bats that I really like on this roster. Doyle, Tovar, Tolia, like you mentioned. Jordan Beck is also another guy. But honorable mentions, guys that aren't listed on the Fangraphs projected opening day lineup. Prospects with pedigree, we got Zach Veen, Drew Romo, and Adio Amador. And then guys who have big league experience like Austin Nola, Keston Hiura, Owen Miller, Sean Bouchard. Zach Veen's bat flip was epic, by the way. He's a guy that I really, really loved out of high school because I love his swing. Do you think he's going to end up in Colorado this year and he has a spot in this lineup at some point?
I thought he was going to make his debut in August of 2023.
Yeah.
At the beginning of that season, and then didn't happen. Injuries kind of, snuffed that out. Injuries again in 2024 did the same for him. But this is going to be his season. He's now on the 40-man roster. I do think he's shown a lot more well-rounded abilities than a Yankiel Fernandez, who's in a similar boat playing in the outfield in AAA on the 40-man roster. And because of his ability to steal bases, he already has 3 stolen bases in spring at the time of recording. He has a bit of a flash that, I think they might want to try to put their reins on a little bit, but it's not over the top flashiness. You've probably already seen Jeffrey Yon out of the bullpen, striking guys out.
That was awesome.
Jump split, right? And that's his personality. And no one on the Rockies has said, hey, Jeffrey, you need to cut that out because we just kind of don't do things that way here in Colorado. It is an unspoken, understanding that Rockies don't really do that. at the same time, I think it's important for there to be a little bit of a flash and there to be a little bit of that emotion. And you started to see that with Nolan Jones a little bit. And we know Jordan Beck has that flair. And I think Zach Veen's going to be the next coming of a player that can inject himself into this lineup. Now, Jordan Beck was a player, as you mentioned, we got to see last year, unfortunately, ended up breaking a bone in his hand, the fourth metacarpal. That kind of curtailed his rookie season. But he was a player that was in high A to start 2023, and then he debuted in 2024. So that almost indicates that, hey, there's no rules now anymore for these Rockies, that if you're a guy in the lower levels that's climbing up and you're producing offensively, you're going to get an opportunity. And odds are not everyone's going to stay healthy. So if and when somebody does go down, I expect Zach Veen to be that first one that gets that opportunity in the outfield.
Yeah, absolutely. They got some young, toolsy players. I mean, how many guys are, as big as like Brenton Doyle and Zach Veen and have the power speed combo? Like these are guys that prospects that teams really dream on. So that's really exciting if you're a Colorado Rockies fan. But if we go into the rotation, this is where, we start to see issues on the pitching side, always in Colorado. German Marquez, Ryan Feltner, Kyle Freeland, Antonio Senzatella, and Austin Gomber are the projected rotation for opening day. Chase Dollander, I've heard they're not ruling him out as a potential option to be in the rotation. He's really exciting. But Marquez and Senzatella, correct me if I'm wrong, were injured all of last year or most of last year. So they get these guys back, plus a Chase Dollander who has the high upside. What do you think about this rotation going into 2025?
Well, in terms of pitching at altitude, pitching in Denver, and their pedigree in pitching in purple, right? These are 5 really good starting pitchers on paper. Now, again, anyone on the outside looking in is going like, oh, you've got a rotation full of guys with a 4.50 ERA. That plays at Coors Field. That you can win ball games if you have a starting rotation of guys that can basically go 6 innings and give up 3 earned runs. Like at Coors Field, you're only giving up 3 earned runs in the first 6 innings. All you need is 9 more outs, right? And 4 runs, and you've got yourself a W. So, that fares very well. Ryan Feltner was a breakout guy last year who was absolutely outstanding in his
I like his stuff a lot.
Starts. Yeah, he was great. Austin Gomber was finally able to stay healthy. He made 30 starts. And again, you're looking at a guy with like a low 4, mid 4 ERA, but at altitude. And you go back and look, he's had the propensity for going 7 to 9 starts of being one of the best left-handed starting pitchers in the game at a time. And then he'll turn around and, of course, have something close to a 9 ERA over his next 5. But he is now 6 months away from free agency. So he is another guy you could look at and say could have a breakout. Kyle Freeland, once he came back from his first stint on the 60-day IL last year, he was also fantastic, had a sub 3.5 ERA in 16 of his final starts, excluding his last outing against the Cardinals. So those 3 guys right there are really solid. And as you mentioned, yes, Senzatella and Marquez, not really sure what you can expect out of them, as this will be their first full season back from Tommy John. Senzatella made 3 starts. Marquez had to be shut down as it just wasn't right after his lone start over the summer against the Mets. But he's been throwing 98 miles an hour in spring, and he's been arguably one of the best starting pitchers in franchise history, the last pitcher to make the All-Star game for the Rockies in 2021 in Denver. So those 4 guys are really solid. Senzatella would have to probably be the odd man out. He's making $10-12 million this year. That being said, when you have a once-in-a-generation top pitching prospect like a Chase Dollander, a guy that, very well could end up becoming perhaps the best pitcher in Rockies history, you don't want to get in the way of that. And the Rockies have done a much better job in recent memory of getting out of their own way and saying, well, no, you have to stop in Albuquerque. You got to deal with the Pacific Coast League. And if you can have a 6 ERA, going 4 innings every single night, that's success. Like that's going to beat down a guy. Let's kind of get away from that. And they've been doing that. They've been saying all the right things in terms of, Dollander being able to fight for a spot in the rotation. And he's been okay so far. Looked great in his first live batting practice, striking out McMahon, Tovar, and Chris Bryant in order. He looked fantastic there. Had a 3-pitch strikeout against Lamont Wade in his first ever start against the Giants and against Justin Verlander. And then his last outing on Saturday against Zach Gallen, not as good, but after a 3-run first inning, which he probably could have gotten out of with a double play that should have been turned by Tyro Estrada, ends up giving up a 3-run home run, but settles down after that and is still able to go his normal 3 innings. So he's that kind of young guy that Rockies pitchers need to be. You get punched in the mouth, but it's not about the pitch you just made. It's about the next pitch. So he has that next pitch mentality that's very suitable for Coors. So despite the fact that the Rockies say one thing and they do another, I tend to believe that they are going to do the thing that they said they are going to do. And Chase Dollander will break camp in the starting rotation with this team.
Love that. Love that. Let's go through the projected bullpen real quick, Patrick. Projected closer, Tyler Kinley. In the setup, we got Seth Halverson, Luis Peralta, and then middle relief, Victor Vodnik, Scott Alexander, Justin Lawrence, Lucas Gilbreth, and then the long man is Tanner Gordon. And then we have some honorable mentions here. Do you see anyone else possibly making their way in here in 2025?
Yeah. There actually was a couple pieces of news that broke very recently. Justin Lawrence was placed on waivers, so he's not totally lost to the team. But he was a guy that did not have options and was a player that going into last year was, their closer, of the future, was the guy with the sweeper, had everything going for him, had the flow. He had the curls even longer than mine. They were very luscious. They looked great. Did get a haircut, did struggle with a 6+ ERA last year, felt really bad about it. So, we'll wait and see. We got about 24 more hours before we find out if another team ends up claiming him, figuring out if maybe they can kind of adapt, his sweeper to sea level, which you got to think even at just $975,000 for his contract this year, someone's probably going to bite on that. We'll wait and see what happens. One of the reasons why they did make that move, I think, was also because some of their non-roster invites had been performing well. Diego Castillo, a guy who had been a closer in the past, he's more likely than not going to make that rotation. Jeff Criswell, unfortunately, is going to need Tommy John surgery. Criswell was one of those young guys last year that came up after August 16th when Elias Diaz, friend of both Pirates and Rockies fans alike, was designated for assignment, and Drew Romo got called up. That was the first silo that the youth movement was coming, and so Jeff Criswell was a part of that. You saw Jaden Hill, Angel Chivigi,
LSU
got a lot more opportunities. Victor Vodnik, who had already been there before, and unfortunately, a name I do need to bring up on the Bucko Banter podcast, Luis Peralta.
Oh, yeah, don't do it. Don't do it.
I'm sorry. We're talking about bullpen. Adam told me to talk about the bullpen. So he's going to be their number 2 lefty out of the pen.
Can we reverse that trade? You guys want Jalen Beeks back? We'll take Luis Peralta.
I'm sorry. You broke up a little bit. I can't hear you. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next subject. Jalen Beeks. I mean, look, you guys were trying. You guys were trying to get something going there, and that was all right for a guy that, I don't think he had even played in Double-A at that point, right?
He was in Double-A. That's it. That's he's Freddie Peralta's younger brother, I think, too.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. He's got personality. He's got a lot of flair. Rockies pushed him through the system quickly. They were able to identify. Got to give the Rockies credit for that. They were able to identify a guy in another system that, hey, wait a minute, there's a lot more here to like, and there's a lot in our system that this Luis Peralta is a lot better than. So you know what? Let's go ahead and upgrade, give him that opportunity right away. And so he's also going to be a part of that bullpen. And, they've got a group of young guys, even a Jake Bird that's out there, a veteran, and Jimmy Herget, that's going to allow, I think, the Rockies to manipulate the roster in all fair and legal ways. Of if a guy is just tired and beat up, okay, he gets a stint on the 15-day IL, then we can call somebody up from AAA. Or if someone's just not getting the job done, you can go down to AAA, and you've got 4 or 5 different relievers. Guy like a Juan Mejia, who's put on the 40-man roster last year, who's still yet to debut, but they like what they see out of that young man. So they've got a lot of potential, a lot of opportunities. And Seth Halverson is also someone that, I imagine there's some Pirates fans out there that are in NL only leagues or fantasy baseball leagues. Seth Halverson, more likely than not, is going to be the closer for the Rockies. Tyler Kinley's got the veteran presence, but Halverson last year was dominant, had a save against the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium, got out of a bases loaded jam. Then the next night, ended up giving up back-to-back home runs to Ohtani and Betts, but was able to shake it off. He's been another one of those.
Not uncommon.
Yeah, I mean, of course, right. If you're a big leaguer, what are you doing if you haven't given up back-to-back home runs to Ohtani and Betts? You must be so bad you don't even get an opportunity to play against those guys. You're right. You're right. Those are the kind of things that happen. So Halverson and Vodnik, I think, are going to get the bulk of the looks as closer. But I think Halverson's been the guy that the front office would really prefer to have it. He's a dude that frequently, with ease, throws 100 miles an hour.
Interesting. That's not a name I'm familiar with. I'll have to check him out. But let's talk about prospects real quick. I mean, other than Zach Fiend, is there a prospect that you're really excited to follow, or a guy that can contribute this year to this Rockies roster?
Well, a prospect that I'm really looking forward to this season, that he's not going to be a part of the Rockies, but he's just a name to keep an eye out on. He just played in the Arizona Complex League last year. In fact, was the ACL MVP, Robert Kalash, Calaz.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Young guy who's 19 years old, and he's got all of the tools and is yet another outfield prospect for the Rockies, who have just far too many. So he's definitely one of those guys that you're going to start to see on a lot of top 100 lists, maybe by mid-season, after he goes out to probably low A Fresno. But, there are two players, I think, other than the guys that you already can see are ticketed for AAA, that could really make an impact late in the year and debut, is Cole Carrigan and Kyle Karros, the son of
Eric Harris.
the son of Eric Karros. Yeah, last year he was the Northwest League MVP for the Spokane Indians in High A. And as I mentioned before, with Jordan Beck making that jump from High A to the majors within 1 year, you could see that with both Kyle Karros and Cole Carrig, who had the opportunity to get promoted to AA Hartford and help out their postseason run in the Eastern League. But they were part of a group of players that really wanted to stay together, and Karros and Carrig wanted to win games rather than worry about their development and their next step. So that lets you know how much these guys do want to win ball games at the major league level, and be a part of something as a group, which historically has been what has worked for the Rockies. Is a lot of homegrown guys who play for each other, that know how to win together as a unit. And so Carrig at third base at 6'5", too, big third baseman.
Yeah.
Or rather, Karros as
Where did Carrig play college baseball? Was it Western Kentucky or?
I think he was San Diego State, where he was a
State.
catcher, shortstop, and center fielder.
Yes.
Wow.
Big utility guy. Yes.
Big utility guy. Yeah, the catcher's mitt, I think, is still in his bag, but he didn't catch at all last year. He's got a lot of fire. The farm director, Chris Forbes, called him a wild horse. And if you've seen him play, he runs like his hair's on fire. He's a maniac in all the best ways possible. So I think he could also be another one of those players that the Rockies say, hey, let's go ahead and let the reins off this wild horse and let him run free at Coors Field.
For as much flack as the Rockies get, develop the front office and whatnot, they have some exciting prospects. I'm a big college baseball guy. I love Sterling Thompson's bat. When we used to watch Florida, he's an exciting guy. Carson Palmquist, another lefty arm, and another arm that I really like. He's not a college guy. I think he's from the Dominican. Jordy Vargas. He's a guy that's a sleeper that I think people should be paying attention to. I think his name's going to get bigger and bigger in the next coming years.
Yeah, he would have been bigger had he not needed Tommy John surgery in 2023. But you're right. He was one of those guys where immediately on the scene, you're like, wait a minute, there could be something here. And so this will be a year for him to get back on track. But you're right. He's absolutely one of those young pitchers to follow. Carson Palmquist, not really sure what his injury was, but Bud Black did talk on Saturday that he was going to throw a simulated game on the backfield. So he's had somewhat of a delay. The guy that's been kind of the 1-2 tandem with Chase Dolander has been Sean Sullivan out of Wake Forest, who's also risen just as quickly as Chase Dolander. He did have hip surgery, so his spring has been, slightly delayed. He was just sent to the minor league side of the facility because, you can't have 63 guys in your spring training big league complex, for the entire month of March. So he did just get sent back there. But he's another one of those guys where has just interesting release point from the left side, powerful, funky stuff. And he could also be a guy that you could see at Coors Field making a start late in the year.
Patrick, what about a pick to click? Somebody who's going to take the Rockies to the next level next year.
Gosh, that's already a part of the team.
Yeah, that's on the team right now.
I mean, I think there could still be a whole extra level for Ezekiel Tovar and Brenton Doyle.
Yeah.
Right. And if I would have to probably pick one, I might pick Brenton Doyle because, I think he had an opportunity to go 30-30 last year. just fell short with the home runs, but he was going through some lower body injuries and was really banged up. But if you've ever seen the guy, he looks like a free safety. He looks like a Pro Bowl free safety where he's just going to dominate the field. And so I think he played through, some injuries, and the way he can run into that wall in center field. He made a play at some point in May and, was able to come at it, not too much worse for the wear. Yet there was a ding in the center field wall for the entirety of the season that you can see. If you go back and watch plays from July and August, you'll see right in dead center field, there's a little ding in center field that Bretton Doyle made because dude can just run through walls. And I think that unfortunately, banged him up a little bit in the second half and maybe slowed some of his production, despite the fact that he was the July player of the month in the National League. So I think there could be that one extra tier for him. And now that he's going to be hitting regularly in that number one spot where Charlie Blackmon used to frequently hit 30 home runs and would occasionally get 100 RBI out of that leadoff spot, I think, he is a player that has another level to unlock.
Absolutely. Patrick, before we let you go, let's get a 2025 prediction for this Rockies team. It could be like team oriented, or it could be like a single player prediction, anything going into this year.
I think they're going to, and maybe this isn't a big stretch, but I think they're going to win at least 10 more games than they did last year. Now that still only puts them at 71 and 91. But that's the kind of jump that they had in 2015 to 2016, the final year of Walt Weiss as their manager. Then they went and recognized that, okay, we kind of have a changing of the guard. We've got an opportunity here. These young guys are playing a lot better, which we can see from this conversation that we're having, how many young players that they have that are making an impact. That in 2017, they decided, we need something different for the clubhouse. It was maybe getting a little bit stale. We needed someone that had a mind a little bit more focused on pitching, and they went the Bud Black route, and they went the back-to-back postseasons. Now, the Rockies still have to win 10 more games at least this year to possibly bridge that gap to then win 15 more games in 2026 to be an 86-win team and sneak into the playoffs as one of the wild card clubs. Maybe that's with Bud Black. Maybe that's going to be with another manager. But I think this is a big year for them to do that. And they've got a lot more depth in the rotation, as we've discussed. They've got some young and exciting arms. And again, depth in that bullpen. And you've got a lineup with a lot of upside. So all of those things are definitely turning more towards the positive. I kind of liken the Rockies as a plane that has been careening downward for a very long time. And the pilot is pulling back on the yoke. And you know what? The treetops are brushing along the bottom of the plane, but you know what? It's about to pull up right now. And I think 2025 is that season with at least a 10-win turnaround.
Awesome. Patrick, where can our listeners find you at?
So on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, it's Patrick D. Lyons, or at Patrick D. Lyons MLB on TikTok. I like to do some fun videos over there. Doing the Rockies Insider podcast just about every single day, and also a free newsletter called the Rockies Insider Newsletter, where I have various musings on historical transactions in club history of the state of Colorado and in Denver from a baseball perspective, and obviously everything that's going on with the Rockies, as well as a little bit of some baseball card talk too, like Hunter Goodman. I don't know how many opportunities you get to talk with players, but them trying to get their MLB debut patch card, like that's now a big thing for guys trying to get that. And Hunter Goodman had an opportunity to get it, didn't get it, but he did meet the person, who has possession of it. So I talked to him about that, and that'll be coming out very soon on the Rockies Insider Newsletter.
Cool. Very cool. Thanks, Patrick. We really appreciate you coming on. Hopefully we can do something again in the future, maybe preview a Pirates Rockies series, but best of luck to you. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks again for having me, Adam and Scott.
Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates, or the steak by the plates. And